Thank you so much. Tracy, Sharon, Palestine, all of our friends from surrounding communities, we are so glad that you're here. Now, we came in to discover a good problem, but a problem nonetheless. So many people showed up for today's meeting, there wasn't enough room for all the people who wanted to come in. Some are out there in that 100-degree heat, and relative to where I live in the Chihuahuan Desert in El Paso, the 1,000,000% humidity that you all find right here. And they said, listen, Beto, don't forget about us when you're in there. I wanted to find a way that we could reach them with some noise that we're going to make. So let me let you in on a little secret, see how you feel about it. We are going to win this election. I think they can hear us outside. And before any of us feel too bad about them, each of them to a person was drinking an ice cold beer out there on this Friday afternoon. So let's not feel sorry for them. And in fact, after this, let's join them and make sure that we're drinking a beer on this hot Friday afternoon. I love everything that Sharon and Tracy had to say, especially the part about all of us being for all of us. Now, you don't have to vote for me. You don't have to be with me. We don't have to be exactly alike. Reasonable people in the same state can come to different conclusions on issues that we care very much about. No two people, in fact, in my life's experience, will ever agree on everything all the time. I have been married for 17 years. Take my word for it. You all know that if you've been married as well. But what I think we can do is find the common ground in front of us. You know, one of the things that Tracy said is that she's sick and tired of the extremism and being asked to hate one another or fear one another or divide based on our differences and keep us from coming together and doing the big things that we are truly capable of. So what I thought I would do, instead of saying, here are all the things that we're against and how bad the other guy is describing what we, all of us together, are going to do after we win this election. Sharon talked about those great public school educators who are right here in the room, the classroom teachers, the school counselors, the librarians, the administrative staff, the support personnel, the bus drivers, everybody who makes public ed possible. Well, I did some research before I worked in the room, and I found that on average, the school teacher in this community is paid, get this, $16,500 a year less than the national average. $16,500 underneath just to get to even, not the highest paid teacher in the country, just the average paid teacher in the country. On average, she's working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. A good chance that the person slinging that beer down that bar is doing so for the privilege of supporting her habit, which is teaching our kids Monday through Friday when the school year begins. When she retires, it will have been 18 years since we last saw a cost of living adjustment for retired teachers in Texas. Prices have gone up. Every single one of those 18 years, they've gone up 90%. Just over this last year, she has received 0% in those 18 years. Good chance she as well is working another job to support herself in this retirement. These teachers tell me, hey Beto, after 2 years of pandemic, 2 years of learning loss, 2 years where I'm now literally trying to keep these kids alive. They've lost their grandparent in some cases, their folks may have lost their job, they may have lost their homes, and some of them are talking about taking their own lives. The level of suicidal ideation and attempts, and unfortunately kids who have taken their lives. Listen, we hate to talk about this. We hate to even think about it. Amy and I are the father of 3 kids who are in high school and in middle school. I don't want to think about it either. But if we fail to confront it and face it and acknowledge it, we're never going to do something about it. Those teachers say, hey Beto, instead of a high-stakes, high-pressure test that does nothing to effectively measure the potential of that kid or the effort that I've expended in order to connect with him, how about we cancel the STAR test and get back to doing what we were trying to do in the first place? What if We treated that teacher with the respect that she has earned, that she is owed, that we all want to give her. We don't need to tell her what version of history she is allowed to teach in the classroom. We don't need to scare the parents of those kids before her about something called CRT that I've never heard of before last year. All of a sudden, the grid doesn't work, the lights aren't coming on, the heat's not running in the winter. He can't fix basic problems in this state. The governor says, hold on a second, let me distract you, CRT, right over here in the classroom. Be very afraid, people. We have one of the, if not the, most amazing stories in the United States of America. The indigenous people who claimed this land before any of our ancestors ever set a foot here, unless you are of an indigenous family. Those who were brought here in bondage against their will, who literally built the success and the wealth of the state of Texas upon which we stand right now. The immigrants who came from the world over, and they chose us. Whether you just got here yesterday from El Salvador, or whether you came in the 19th century with my great-great-grandparents who were fleeing famine and certain death in Ireland, this was the one country, the one state that would take them in and allow them to do better and make this place better by their very presence. I want to make sure that if you've answered the call to become that public servant in the classroom, you're doing it not for the money, or the fame, or the glory, or the retirement, because none of that's going to work in your favor. You're doing it because you want to unlock that lifelong love of learning in that child, stoke that curiosity. We get that thing burning. There is no stopping that kid over the course of their lifetime, the great things that they're going to do. When we win this election, we're paying our teachers enough to work only one job. We're raising their retirement every single year. We will treat them with the respect that we all want to treat them with going forward. We're going to make world-class public education a hallmark of the state of Texas. Look, there's a lot we can disagree on, and we will, but on that much, I think every single one of us can get behind it. I've got another one for you. Let's say you graduate from one of these great public high schools. What are the opportunities that you have next?
George Soros gave you to fund those kids.
I'm happy to give you the mic. This guy's... It's all right. And just so everyone knows, after I finish making some comments, I'm going to turn this microphone over to you. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. You can ask a critical question, you can give me an idea on how to make this community better. I am all ears. Same for that guy right there. We're not going to reward interruptions or being rude or busting up this meeting the way he tried to do. But if you'll keep your peace until I'm done, I will hand the mic to you literally. In fact, Cynthia was with me when we were in Bowie. The first person we handed the microphone in Bowie was holding a Greg Abbott sign. And it turned out that her question was that she was a former high school principal. She's now subbing in that same school because we cannot keep enough teachers on the payroll. Her question was, Beto, how do we find the resources to fund this? Because I'm with you on it. Now listen, I don't know if she's going to vote for me in this next election, but her question, my presence, our interaction proved there's more that we have in common than will ever divide us. So I'll promise to give you the mic after this is over. This is the mic that Cynthia has in her hand right there. So look, we established that we're for world-class public schools. We're about to talk about what happens when that child graduates from that school. What are her options going forward? If she wants to pursue a higher education, I want to make sure that she can do it. I want to make sure that cost is not an object. If she wants to pursue higher ed in order to come back and serve this community, we are 4,000 nurses short in Northeast Texas right now. We are thousands of classroom teachers, counselors, and librarians short in this part of the state right now. We do not have enough medical providers who received a medical school education from Anderson County right now. How about this? If you want to pursue an in-demand profession, like one of those that I just described, in an underserved community, like perhaps the one that we're in right now, the state of Texas will invest in your education so there is no college debt. So you can come back here on the condition that you practice what you preach. You teach these kids here, you practice medicine here, you work as a nurse here for at least 6 years. That's the deal. We pay your higher ed, you come back and take care of your community. I can get behind that. Most of us can get behind that. You don't want to go to college. You want to get to work right away at the age of 18. Let's make sure that we're investing in the skills, the trades, the apprenticeships. We don't have enough welders, electricians, plumbers, steel workers, those skilled craftsmen and craftswomen who literally we need to build the economy of this state. Let's make sure that we ease the way in entry to a union or to one of these vocational schools right now that sometimes are situated within the high school so that you graduate at 18 with a high school diploma, 2 years of community college and associate's degree, a welder certification, 18 years old, and you can command $60,000 a year. That's the kind of high-paying, high-skill, high-value job that I want to see more of in the state of Texas. And not just anywhere in the state of Texas, right here in East Texas, okay? We need more reasons for more people to come back here. And then this. We are right now in the least insured state in the country. What the heck does that mean, right? Is that just a number? Is that just a statistic? What it means is that there are more kids who die of diabetes in Texas than any other state. What that means is that we're 51st in America in access to a mental health care provider. I have been at meetings like this one here in Palestine, the one I'll go to after this in Lufkin, where folks stand up and they say, hey Beto, my brother, who has schizophrenia, but doesn't qualify for Medicaid in this state, gets arrested on purpose to be taken to the county jail, which is the one place he's guaranteed any kind of care at all, so bad that right now our county jails are the largest provider of mental health care services in the state of Texas. Not only is it immoral, it is incredibly expensive. It costs you and I about $120 a night as taxpayers to keep that guy locked up. And not only is he locked up for a couple of days and then back there on the streets, but when he's back on the streets, he's not able to go to work or raise his family or finish his education or start a small business or join law enforcement or do whatever he was placed on this planet to do in the first place. We're losing out on all the benefit that he could do for himself and for all of us. So when we win this, we're going to take yes for an answer and expand Medicaid and bring $10 billion a year into this state. That is your money. Your federal income taxes coming back to you. $10 billion a year. We connect more people with care. We keep more of these rural hospitals that keep closing down on Greg Abbott's watch. 16 so far and counting. We keep them open. We make sure that we hire more of our own because we educate more of our own. And here's the kicker. We do all that, not only do we save more lives and make better the lives of our fellow Texans, but we also reduce your property taxes. Because right now, when that person who does not qualify for Medicaid, but still has diabetes, can't afford their insulin, their suffering, their pain, their agony becomes too much, at some point they'll take themselves into one of your local hospitals or clinics. The outcomes will not be as good because they waited so long for the care. The care itself will be exponentially more expensive because they've waited so long and all the complications that they have developed, but they're nowhere closer to being able to pay for it. That doesn't mean that the bill disappears. It just means it gets passed on to you and to me in our property taxes. Expanding Medicaid, the federal government pays 90 cents on the dollar for expansion. That's that $10 billion coming back to us that I just described. Not only saves that person's life, it reduces your property tax bill to make it more affordable to stay in this community, to stay in your home, to keep that farm or that ranch and pass it on to your kids and to your grandkids. So think about that. The things that we just talked about right now. We're talking about world-class schools. We're talking about the best jobs in America being created right here in Texas, and not just in the obvious places in Texas, but those where we are right now in Anderson County, and then making sure that everyone can see a doctor, can fill their prescription, can take their child to a therapist. In other words, everyone can be healthy enough and well enough to live to their full potential. On that much, world-class schools, great jobs. I'll give you the microphone if you'll just be quiet for a second. Great schools, the ability to see a doctor. On that much, we can agree, right? And I think beyond that, when we contrast these issues that bring us together versus the division, the chaos, the incompetence, the cruelty, the corruption of those who are in power right now. Listen, they want to tell you who to be afraid of and who to hate. In Greg Abbott's Texas, it is... Yeah, you're welcome to stay here. And in fact, we'll give you the microphone, sir, but just please be respectful. And you can have...
Keep going, Beta.
I appreciate you coming. And it's too bad he's leaving because I want to hear what the guy has to say. We may try to find him. We may try to find him afterwards. Listen, the only way we're going to do all these things is together. We cannot do this for Democrats. We cannot do this for Republicans. We won't win this election just with Democrats. We're going to need all of us coming together. So we've got to be sure that we welcome everyone at every opportunity, that we're patient with one another, because this is a tough time in this state. It's really hard for a lot of people. Your property taxes going up, your electricity bill going up, your cost of living going up. I don't blame the guy for coming in angry and maybe thinking, you know what? This Beto guy, he's somebody who wants high office. Is he going to lie to me? Is he going to be straight with me? Is he going to deliver for me? I've been told one thing by Fox News. Let me hear what he has to say. I want to make sure that I have a chance to do that. But this is what we're doing now. You know, Greg Abbott, it's, you or me, right? If you're gay, he doesn't want you. If you're transgender, you don't belong. In fact, he's going to arrest your parents for child abuse. If you're a woman, you can't make your own decisions about your own life, your own future, and your own health care. If you're an immigrant, he's going to try to scare the rest of us about you, that you're coming to get us, that you're invading this country, that you're going to take our jobs, our kids' place in school. The benefits that you and I have earned, it's always distraction. It's always fear. It's always hatred. In our Texas, it's not you or me. In our Texas, it's you and me. It's all of us doing this together, right? And that means whatever the differences between us, we're going to respect them. In our Texas, if you're a woman, you're making your own decisions about your own body, your own future, and your own health care. In our Texas, if you're a veteran, if you put your life on the line for this country, if you're willing to swear an oath not to the president, not to a political party, but to this Constitution, our democracy, and our way of life, if you are struggling right now, despite the fact that you live in the 9th largest economy on the planet, Texas has a $2 trillion GDP. If you're one of the hundreds or even thousands of veterans who will be sleeping on the side of the road tonight, underneath a bridge, on a bench at a city park, I'm going to make sure that as a state, we spare no expense, we lift any burden to make sure that you get connected with the services that you earned, that every single one of us owes you. And it doesn't just stop there. If you came back from Vietnam and you're at a major crossroads in your life, you cannot get in to see someone at the VA. We're going to make sure that we connect you with state and county facilities, provide access to private providers where you need it. We're going to make sure we reduce that rate of veteran suicide. If you came back from Afghanistan or Iraq and you were exposed to these toxic burn pits and you breathed in literally God only knows what, and now you're having a hard time breathing, or you're back home here in Palestine with your family, we're going to follow the lead of that Vietnam-era veteran who said, look, buddy, I waited 40 years for my exposure to Agent Orange to be treated as the presumptive condition for the cancers that I and others with whom I serve have, for the birth defects that some of our kids were born with. I'm going to make sure this country does not wait 40 years for you. We're going to stand up a toxic burn pit registry right here in the state of Texas to help this generation of veterans and not wait 40 years. And in a part of the state that struggles with access to mental health care, that struggles with substance abuse and addiction, to these veterans who have told me, And ladies and gentlemen, I served 6 years on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, the honor of my life. And if I heard this once, I heard it 1,000 times. The VA, all too prepared to prescribe him an opioid to which he may become addicted, from which he may die. The VA, and present company excluded, if you work at the VA clinic, this is no fault of your own. This is our national policy. The VA is only the VA can. Once they find you're addicted, they cut you off cold turkey, set up an appointment for you 9 months from today, and wish you good luck. To that veteran who finds himself or herself buying drugs on the street in order to treat themselves and says, hey Beto, why did they prescribe me an opioid in the first place? What I have found is that, for example, using marijuana, access to cannabis, allows me to live with these symptoms. My appetite has declined. I can sleep at night. We're going to make sure that no veteran and no other Texan, for that matter, spends a single night in jail for possession of a substance that's already legal in most of the rest of the country. When we win, we are going to legalize marijuana in the state of Texas. We're going to get that done as well. And lastly, part of how I think we got to a total ban on abortion, with no exception for rape or incest, in a state that has one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in the developed world. 3 times as deadly, by the way, for black women in this state as it is for white women, is because we failed to imagine that we could have ever gotten to this point. I'm guilty of that. If you told me 2 years ago, Beto, within 2 years, a total ban beginning at conception, and when they confront the governor about there being no exception for rape, that guy's actually going to say that it's okay because we're going to eliminate rape in the state of Texas. I wouldn't have believed it. They're pulling my leg. Well, listen, they have told us exactly where they are going from here. Justice Clarence Thomas, who sits on the highest court in the land. Sounds like you've heard of the guy. In his concurring opinion to Dobbs, which overturned Roe versus Wade, he said next on the block is contraception. Next on the block after that is same-sex intimacy. In other words, reviving our sodomy laws in the state of Texas. You thought that was some 19th century medieval stuff? It is coming back. Next on the block is marriage equality. So, let us pledge ourselves right now, when we win this, we're going to protect you to be the person that you are, to love the person that you're with, to be able to marry and enjoy every right that every other Texan has. We are standing up for the LGBTQ community right here in the state of Texas. We love you all, we're proud of you, and we want to make sure that we fight for you and have your back. Look, that's what we're for. That's what we want to do. That's a Texas I think we could all be proud of and happy to live in. All we have to do is the work to win this. And listen, if you think that this is impossible, let me lay this on you. We've been up against longer odds, greater challenges, and overcome them before. Prior to '73, abortion was also illegal in this state. But no one rode to the rescue of Texas women. It was Jane Roe, a Texas woman, Roe versus Wade. It was her 2 attorneys, Linda Coffey, who lives in Dallas, Texas to this day, Sarah Weddington, who came from that liberal bastion of Abilene, Texas, who successfully argued that case, those 2 women, before an all-male Supreme Court in the early 1970s, and established that right to privacy that had, until a couple of months ago, withstood the test of time for half a century. It was Dr. Lawrence Nixon in El Paso, Texas, a black physician, who went up against the all-white primary in Texas in 1924 when it was illegal for a black man or a black woman to vote in our elections for governor or congressman or county commissioner. Took that case to the Supreme Court and won it not once but twice. We can do this. We have done it before. We are going to win this election, and we are going to do it together. Are you with me, Palestine? I'm with you. Thank you for being here today. This panel is ready. All right, here we go. Thank you all for coming out. Miss Connell's got a microphone. She will bring it to you if you have a question. Again, You can be for us, you can be against us, you can ask a question, you can offer an idea. We just ask you to do it with respect. And Cynthia right here will bring you the microphone.
I will. Just a quick announcement. If you're parked across the street in Kroger's, you please need to move your vehicle or they're going to tow it. So we have 5 cars that are in Kroger's. Please, just announcing that. Please go move it if it's there.
I'm Susan. I'm a retired school counselor
Okay, everybody, we want to make sure we can hear Susan's question. She's a retired school counselor.
who's also subbing. And I have 2 questions. First one is, I'm also a registered Republican. And all I know is what I've heard from other people, and I got tired of it making up my mind for me, and that's why I'm here. I wanted to. My daughter's a Democrat. She's all for you, and she told me I needed to come here again, and she's right.
Good. I'm so glad you're here.
My first question is, how can you get a raise for teachers and for retirees if it has to go through the legislature?
It's a great question. Folks, the question is, how are we going to get that raise? If we're trying to get up $16,000, I think it's $16,500 in this community just to get to par. If we want to increase the cost of living adjustment for retired teachers, that's a lot of money. There's a lot of retired teachers out there. There are a lot of current teachers on the payroll. There are thousands more that we want to draw in. First thing that we need to acknowledge is that we do not lack for resources in this state. Our biennial budget is $250 billion. I mentioned earlier, our total GDP is $2 trillion. We have the resources. She's asking, how do we find the political will to do this? So every county, I do the same thing that you saw me do here today. I say, in your county, teachers are underpaid by X. You know, in Houston, it might be $4,000. In Dallas ISD, it might be $5,000. Here, it's $16,500. The case I'm making is that the most underpaid teachers in the state happen to be represented by Republican state legislators. If you all show up in the numbers that you showed up today at that Republican legislator's office, and you say, listen, we're Republicans or we're Democrats, it doesn't matter, no me importa. But if you want to get reelected, you're going to do the right thing by us and for us. You're going to get across that table from Beto O'Rourke. You all are going to talk about how we get these pay increases paid for, how we make sure that we take care of these retired teachers. And oh, by the way, if you're looking for more money in that state budget so that we can pay these teachers and not move anything else around, that marijuana legalization that I just talked about, that nets us $1 billion additional a year. Your property taxes, which you're paying too much of right now as homeowners and renters, I'll tell you what, the corporations in this state are not. As your appraisals go up, their appraisals go down. They hire the lobbyists, they hire the attorneys to contest them. We're going to make sure that there is fairness in the appraisal process, and corporations pay their fair share. That's another $3 to $6 billion that could come in a year. And if we gave up the stunts at the border, like the involuntary activation of 10,000 members of the Guard, building this wall, and instead focused on solutions like a Texas-based guest worker program, that's another $5 billion that we're spending right now. So I'll bring the resources to the table, you bring the political will of keeping up the pressure, and together we're going to get this done. Thank you for being here.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. I'm an LPC, or I was. I let my license expire when my little brother passed away because it was all coming due and I just couldn't do it. I would love to get it back, but in order to get it back, you now have to go through 3,000 hours of an internship. And we are short on mental care papers. So is there anything that could be done about that?
Yeah, this one is a common sense solution, right? If we are underserved, if there's more demand than there is capacity, let's do everything we can to bring people who actually have experience and expertise into this. In addition, y además, for nurses who are currently practicing in the community, let's allow you to work to your full scope of practice, especially if we're having a harder time bringing in psychiatrists or MDs into the community. We have the people, we have the skill, we just got to get the bureaucracy out of the way and allow you to do your job. So thank you for asking. Great question in this community. Appreciate it. Gracias. Hey.
Hi, I'm going to follow kind of on what she was. I taught for 13 years. I also worked outside of teaching. I have my 80 quarters, but I can't touch my Social Security, and I can't get Social Security disability, but I only taught 13 years, so I don't have my points for TRS. So I can't touch my retirement that I paid into for 13 years either. I don't get Medicaid because my home property is $80,000, even though my house, if I sold it, would be less than $50,000.
So what you just described, as we search for a reason why, we run up against the inexplicable, right? One of the things that you're talking about is the windfall elimination provision, which basically says if you dedicate yourself to public service, but you also worked in the private sector and paid quarter after quarter into Social Security, we're going to penalize you for that public service and not allow you to draw down what you paid in. To be clear, none of these teachers or retired teachers are asking for a handout. They're just asking for what they have already paid in through their service in the private sector or the public sector. The only reason I can fathom for why this exists right now is at some point in our past, retired teachers were just getting filthy rich, right? We were minting millionaires and billionaires. They leave the classroom, they go to these big mansions. The people of Texas just couldn't take it anymore. And they said, we got to have the WEP. No, there's really no good reason for it. And this is another one where I guarantee you, I happen to believe, though I'm a Democrat, that Republicans care about good public education. Republicans care about you, if not everyone, but enough of them, a critical number of them, enough about you that they'd be willing to listen to you. What you just said was pretty compelling to me. It got to me. I bet you it will get to them. We just, again, have to find that common ground. And for a lot of these Republicans, when they learn that Greg Abbott wants to take your public tax dollars out of your public school classrooms, turn them into vouchers, and send them to private schools. In many of their communities and counties, there is no private school for that voucher to go to. So we take all the money out of your classroom, and it goes to Dallas, or it goes to Houston, or it goes to some other district, but it does not stay here at a time that you're already underfunded. Now, it wouldn't matter what party I belong to, if my governor was doing that to my community, to my constituents, to my teachers, and to the kids that they serve, I'd be pretty angry. I'd want to do something about it. We're going to make sure that we do something about this. Eliminate the WEP. Make sure that you can earn that back and be able to live in retirement. Thanks for asking.
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody, please keep your questions just to one so we can get to as many of the hands up as I can.
Hello, Beto.
Hi there.
I work in a pharmacy, and I see. Oh,
I'm sorry, I'm not used to this.
I work in a pharmacy, and definitely with Medicare. And it's sad that most patients, especially for insulin and asthmatic patients, have to spend at least $131 just for insulin, a 3-month supply, even for asthma, like albuterol, inhaler, and nebulizers. And also, before they are even qualified for the Part D on Medicare, they have to wait like maybe a year or two before they even qualify to get Medicare. So, to protect what my generation and what's going on now, what can we do to make it better for us, for everybody?
Thanks for asking this question. In addition, I mentioned Medicaid expansion, the $10 billion that we want to bring in. Our pharmacist has brought up the issue of Medicare and the wait time, the deductible, the copay, the additional expenses that functionally prevent people from being able to use these programs, which, remember, we came up with in the first place, right? We as Texans. Medicaid signed into law in 1965, the same year that LBJ, the first Texas president, signs into law the Voting Rights Act. Why do we make it so hard for our fellow Texans to use it? So in addition to bringing in that $10 billion a year, we're going to have to reform and rewrite both reimbursement for local providers, because I don't like that a provider in Anderson County will be reimbursed at a lower rate than a provider in Harris County, and the wait time for patients and beneficiaries who have paid into the system every day of their working lives. What use is it to us if we can't get to it? If we have diabetes but cannot afford the insulin? And we've met too many of our fellow Texans who are in that place right now. So I look forward to working with you on this. You understand it, you live it, you treat people every single day. We're going to work with you to make sure insulin is affordable immediately for every single Texan. Thanks for asking.
To this side.
Hey there.
I'm so glad you came to Palestine because when it's election time, none of the Democratic candidates ever come to the rural counties. They all want to go to Houston, Dallas, El Paso, not El Paso, but San Antonio and Austin. They forget us. Thank you for coming. When you ran for senator against Ted Cruz, you won the Metroplex areas. But when the county boxes came up, that's where you lost. Because nobody comes through the rural areas. Now, my concern is, I'm a state employee, I'm not going to say where. It is a prison system. I'm not going to say which one. In the state, there is only a few units with air conditioning. The medical departments are air conditioned. The front offices and the offices where the people work within the system, that work in the offices everywhere, are air conditioned. But in laundry, food service, segregation, GP, and everywhere else, it's 110 degrees right now.
That's a good idea.
One of the units is the largest unit in the state, 4 tiers high. They do have blowing fans, but all that fan is doing is blowing hot air. Thank God no one has died this year in the system. I do remember when COVID first hit at the unit I was originally from, we had 2 to 3 die as they got off the bus, trying to walk down the walkway with their property. Died at the gate, in between the gate, trying to get to their housing. Died just right there on the ground. My concern is, can you help us and help the offenders get air conditioning in these units? One thing I do know is that the Senate almost had all the votes a few years ago to get the units air conditioned. But there was one senator who fought against it, and the rest of them went in with him because of his ignorance. He's never been to one of the units. And his statement was, oh, they're criminals, that's all they need to get. They deserve being in the heat. That's not fair. That's not right. That's inhumane.
We're with you on this, and I'm so glad that you elevated this issue because, look, this is, to the gentleman's point about us showing up in Palestine, this is why we have these meetings. There is no political action committee organized around prisoners or the incarcerated in the state of Texas. They don't write campaign contribution checks. They're not going to get you on TV. There's no big ribbon cutting ceremonies. There's no splashy, sexy headline stories about what you do for those who are locked up, because far too long we want to turn our backs on them or avert our gaze or pretend they don't exist, or at worst, as the gentleman say, you know what? Who cares about them? They get what they deserve. They broke the law. That's what's coming to them. This country, I think you all know this, puts more people behind bars than any country on the planet. You think about Russia, whatever you think of Russia or China or North Korea or Iran, we incarcerate more of our own than they do of theirs. Within this country, the state of Texas incarcerates more of its own people than does any other state in the union. And not that this is comfortable to talk about, but I think we should, and I think it's part of our responsibility, given the complexion of my skin, to acknowledge that most of the people who are in these prisons do not look like me. That overly represented are black and brown men and women in this state. I mentioned marijuana earlier. Texans of all races and ethnicities use marijuana at the same rate, which is probably a lot, right? Everybody's using it wherever they are. Disproportionately, it is black and brown Texans who are stopped, who are frisked, who are incarcerated, who after release have to check a box on every employment application form saying that they have that conviction. This state pioneered the use of not only private prisons, but convict leasing. You know, after Reconstruction, there was this god-awful interpretation of the 13th Amendment, which says that slavery is not allowed in this country except for punishment for crimes committed. You know what happened in Texas, of course, in the late 19th century? Sheriffs began to arrest people solely based on the color of their skin in order to lock them up to provide the labor needs. And not just for local manufacturers or the cotton gins or the plantations across this state. Your state capital in Austin, Texas, was built by convict laborers who looked like you and did not look like me. Now, I say all that not to give anybody a history lesson. There are history teachers here who could do a better job. But to say that there's a reason that we're in the place that we are today. There's a reason that it can be 110 degrees outside and humid and there's no air conditioning for the people inside those cells. It's not something brand new that we came up with. It's a legacy of the way that this state has treated one another for far too long. And the way that we began this meeting, saying that we are truly for everyone, it's got to mean something. And if you're for everyone, you're for that prisoner in that cell right now who might die of dehydration or heat exhaustion or stroke simply because we have yet to find the political will to be there for him. I'm sorry for the long answer. I just want to tell you, I know where this is coming from, but I also know where we've got to get to. I will work with you to make sure that we get this done. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
My best to get to as many as I can.
This kind of dovetails off of what this gentleman said. If it was approved for air conditioning, which I think it should be, how is our grid going to handle it? Seriously. I've heard you touch on a lot of things. Last February of 21, when we were all freezing, and now we're all frying, with the mortal fear that when we get home, our air conditioning and our electricity is going to be turned off and it's going to cost hundreds of dollars to replace whatever's in our fridge because it's been off for hours. Are you going to try and put us on the national grid or do something to fix our grid?
I love it. Thank you. Right? This is the energy capital of the world, right? We have more energy resources, produce more energy per square foot than any other place on the planet. Last February, the temperature drops. We cannot keep the lights on. We cannot keep the heat running. Your water stopped flowing because your pipes froze. Then they burst, and to the woman's point, it destroyed your floorboards, mold running up to your ceiling, tens of billions of dollars cumulatively in damage. But that's not the worst of it. More than 700 Texans lost their lives. Kids who literally froze to death in their beds because their moms could not pile enough blankets on their bodies. Vietnam-era veterans who died in their trucks trying to recharge their oxygen tanks of hypothermia. Little girls who died next to their moms in their family's garage of carbon monoxide poisoning, trying to stay warm when they kept the motor running. People who burned up in their apartments because they were literally lighting their furniture on fire to keep from freezing to death. That was our Texas, and that is, to the woman's point, our Texas today under Greg Abbott. Because though he was warned, he didn't fix the grid by winterizing it or weatherizing it. Though he was warned, he never asked his top political contributors to invest in their own infrastructure so that we could keep each other alive. Though he was warned, he ordered the PUC to peg electricity prices at the highest level possible, which meant that gas traders and pipeline CEOs charged 200 times the going rate for fuel in the state, stealing $11 billion from all of us that we are now paying back $45 a month per ratepayer every single month. That's how much your electricity bills have gone up. The question is, what do we do about it? Here's what we do. One, we winterize and we weatherize the grid so that the gas no longer freezes at the wellhead as it did last February. Two, and you just suggested it, we connect ERCOT to the national grid so we can draw down power when we need it, send power back up when we have a surplus. And three, it's not a figure of speech to say that that money was stolen from us, that $11 billion over 5 days last February. It was stolen from us. There's a state statute that does not allow people to price gouge our fellow Texans in the midst of a disaster or declared emergency. That's exactly what they did by stealing that $11 billion. When we win this, when I'm your governor, we're taking them to court. We're getting every penny of that $11 billion back, and returning it to the ratepayer. Thank you. The lights will stay on in Texas when we win this race.
Okay, I have two quick acknowledgements. I want to recognize Jamar Jefferson, who's here. He's a congressional candidate. And then Mayor Pro Tem Vicky Shivers was here. She had to leave, but just wanted to make sure that y'all knew she was here.
Thank you for being here.
The good news this morning was that your campaign contributions have exceeded the governor's campaign.
Thank you.
We come to an event like this, I understand Chris over here in the light blue shirt is your bag man. Chris, I brought you a check, and hopefully everybody else here will leave you a check. And what I want when you get to be governor is I'm a Longhorn. I'd like to have some Longhorn football tickets.
Thank you so much for the contribution from Smith County, and it is a nice one. And though I cannot promise you any Longhorn tickets in exchange, I would love to spend time with you and get a chance to be with you and to learn what you have been doing to make this moment possible. Because I know it's not just those of us who've been working on this campaign over the last year. It is those of you who've been working on this for years, in some cases decades, to bring this moment to pass. And I love you for it. I'm grateful to you. And you mentioned earlier, we outraised the sitting governor of the state of Texas by $3 million over the last reporting period. It's people like you that made that happen. And almost as good, when Quinnipiac, which is the gold standard in political polling, looked at this race in December, we had just gotten in. We were 15 points down to the governor. They just took a second look a few weeks ago. We're now 5 points down. We made up 10 points in 6 months. He has spent nearly $10 million on TV. We have spent a total of $0 on TV. This is you all showing up for one another, putting in the money. 500,000 unique contributions, 500,000 unique contributions in those last 4 months. The single greatest group is Texas school teachers. So thank you very much. And I want to acknowledge, Cynthia just mentioned, but Jamar, if you don't mind coming over here, Jamar Jefferson is going to be your next member of Congress in Washington, D.C. This is someone I'm going to be able to work with. If I am in Texarkana, I see Jamar there before I arrive, he's there after I leave. If I show up in Pittsburgh or Clarksville or right here today in Palestine, Jamar is here and he will talk with you, he'll listen to you, no matter your station in life, the party to which you belong, any difference between us. This guy is the real deal. He really means it. I want us to make sure that we vote for him. We're on this ballot together in November, okay? Jamar? Thank you.
Mr. Monroe, I'm so happy you talked about the economic wealth of this state because it's not trickling down to your disabled or your senior citizens. I lost my job in 2010 because of my health. So I was too early to retire, so I went on that limited Social Security and things got worse. In 2017, my mother died. She left me a little bit of money. Not enough to build a mansion, not enough to get a Ferrari or shoot, Cadillac, I couldn't even buy that. But the thing is, I was on Medicaid. It took care of all of my medical needs. The second I called from California to be honest with the state of Texas that I had some money, I immediately lost Medicaid. The little bit of money that I did have has now gone down to almost nothing. Texas has done something good. They've raised the maximum. It's up to, I think you can now have 8,000 plus in order to apply for Medicaid again. I had QMB. The thing is, my health hasn't gotten better. I'm 76. I don't mind telling my age. I'm 76. I'm not going to get any younger. But I am not wealthy like the people wherever they live. I don't know about Austin. I haven't seen too many wealthy disabled people in Austin either. So where's the money going? Who has the wealth in Texas? Where is our middle income? And what are we doing for people with disabilities?
Thank you for being here. Thanks for saying this. Real quick on this point about the threshold. We met another family in Waco, Texas. Mom of 3 kids, one with a significant disability. She's also taking care of her adult disabled brother. Her mom lives with her as well. I'm asking her about her life, where she works, about her kids, how they're doing in school. And she's so proud to tell me that she's just received a promotion at work, but that she's going to decline the promotion because with the promotion comes a pay increase. She takes that pay increase, her kids can no longer afford to see the doctor. She will earn too much to be eligible for Medicaid in Texas without expansion. She will not earn enough to qualify for a subsidy. She will be uninsured. She's not going to move forward or up in her life because of our failure to do the right thing right now. So Medicaid expansion, as I mentioned earlier, is so fundamental, not just to accessing health care or lowering your property taxes, but allowing people to want to get ahead and to move forward in being able to get ahead. You asked where the wealth is right now. It is not with the working Texans who deserve it. This minimum wage in this state is still $7.25 an hour. More people labor below a living wage, meaning they take a second or a third job or they're on government assistance than in any other state. Again, we do not lack for wealth or resources or revenue, but for the political will. Political will that we'll find when we win this race, like raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, expanding Medicaid, doing something about state-supported services for those with disabilities. The wait list will set you back 18 years. You get in the back of the line for state-supported services if you or your child have a disability, physical, intellectual, or otherwise. And I'm listening to these parents of medically complex kids. 18 years. If you get in it when your kid graduates from high school, as my mom did for my sister, she's in her 30s before she gets the help that she deserves. I mentioned marijuana earlier and that revenue that comes in. Let me give you another example of how these kinds of resources can be used. The wait time in Colorado for state-supported services was 18 years until they made marijuana legal and they directed the proceeds from the sale, the taxable controlled sale, to that wait list. It is now under a year to be able to receive state-supported services. So doing the right thing, bringing in the right revenue, paying people a living wage, expanding Medicaid, this is how we correct the imbalance that we have today in Texas. Thanks for asking the question.
Hey, we're by the door area.
Folks, we're going to switch you out. Either you leave or we leave first, okay? So, Cynthia, let's see how far we can go.
All right, and I'm going to do 3 more questions.
Okay.
Hello, and thank you. It's a pleasure to see you again. I have a really boring question, so I apologize, but I want to say it's also interconnected with all these great points everybody's bringing up. It's infrastructure. Our public roads, they should belong to the public and not the private sector. So roads should be used for public infrastructure funding and not for Wall Street to get a higher rate of return from billionaire investors. We've seen what happens to our electricity grid when the private sector deregulates us. We've seen what happens to our prison system and the rate of incarceration when judges and VAs are invested in private prisons. And connecting it to everything else, we see the sucking of everybody's money, hard-earned taxpayers' money, going to the rich and not being left for us and our wages or left for us and our public services. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Love your point. Let's do away with these private prisons. Let's do away with these vouchers that take our public money to go to private schools. Let's do away in Child Protective Services, 32,000 kids in foster care. We privatize the care for many of these kids. Later find out that they're abused in these facilities. There are some functions of the state that are too important to privatize. And you mentioned those, including how we fund our roads and our ability to get what we grow and raise and produce to markets, or just to get our kids to school. So we're on the same page. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate it.
Right here behind you.
Here we go.
Could you reach out to the Hispanic community and maybe say something in Espanol, please?
Absolutely. And listen, I recognize that many in the Hispanic community don't speak Spanish and prefer to receive what they're getting out of me and anybody else in English. But the gentleman's right that in some communities, including here, you may find that the most watched newscast is in Spanish, right? It's on Univision or Telemundo. Pues estamos aquí en la comunidad de Palestine para hablar sobre cada tema que es importante a cada persona adentro de la comunidad. Temas como la educación de nuestros hijos en las escuelas, la necesidad de apoyar a las maestras y la gente que viven y trabajan aquí en la comunidad. Además, necesitamos trabajar en los empleos que merecemos y necesitamos aquí un salario mínimo que tiene dignidad, $15 por hora. Vamos a hacer eso también. Y por el último, necesitamos ofrecer la oportunidad de ir a un doctor, recibir la medicina que necesitamos para sobrevivir aquí con nuestras familias y para contribuir al éxito de esta comunidad y cada comunidad. Vamos a hacerlo después de ganar esta elección con su apoyo. Gracias. Thank you.
I'm so sorry if I wasn't able to get to your question, but this is going to be our last question right here, this beautiful young lady.
Muchas gracias, Beto.
I just wanted to say, basically, hopefully everyone here. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
I feel like you give us hope. I just had a daughter, and she's 5 months old. I had a daughter, and she's 5 months old now. You feel like we grow up somewhere with her where she has no rights to her body at all. I feel like you give us hope that all of us feel like human beings that matter. So thank you for everything. And we're gonna win this election.
Yeah!
And I hope you know that we're all standing beside you, no matter what anyone says. I'm 18. This is my first time to be able to vote. I'm so excited to vote for you. And it's going to be a great election. You're going to win and you're going to kick ass.
That was so beautiful. Listen, you got to know that, and I can tell by the way everybody reacted, that you are giving all of us hope at this moment as well. And these are some pretty dark days that have descended on this state right now. And if there's one thing we need, it's hope. But it cannot be a false hope, and it cannot be a passive hope. It's not, I hope someone's going to come and fix this. I hope someone's going to ride and rescue. I hope this stuff gets better on its own. It's got to be hope that is met with our action and our commitment. So in your case, she's 18, she's registering, she's voting. In our case, listen, and I know this is hard, and this is my big ask at the end of the meeting. And maybe we can all drink a beer afterwards after I make this ask. We're going to win this with, by, and for one another, but that's more than a phrase. That actually means getting out there and knocking on doors. It means meeting people where they are. It means showing up a complete stranger and saying, listen, the reason I'm out here knocking in this 102-degree heat is that my rights as a woman, your rights as a gay man, The fact that you're a school teacher and cannot afford to work just that one job. The fact that we're having kids who are going to grow up in a country that does not respect their very existence after 246 years of this experiment that we've been trying to pull off. That's why I'm at your door right now. And that person who may not have voted in previous elections, and in 2020, the most important presidential election of our lifetimes, 20,000 people in this county did not cast a ballot who were eligible to do so. 7,000 more have entered the rolls since then. 27,000 voices and votes we have yet to hear from or count. You show up on those doors, and they may be the very doors that Greg Abbott has designated for suppression and intimidation, the folks he's trying to make it harder on to vote. You show up, and I guarantee it, there's a much higher chance that they'll show up for us on the night of November 8th. But it's going to require signing up in order to do that. There are folks in this room, I see one right back here, maybe we have 2, 3. The folks in the yellow reflective vests, they will sign you up to knock on doors. It's not easy, I've done it. I do it all the time, I do it almost every single day. But it's the most powerful way to connect with the voters who are going to decide the outcome of this election. Last thing that I want to say, if I can ask my friend Angie to come up. Angie is an example of this. She, on her TikTok account, which if you do not follow it, you need to get on it. It's one of the best that you're going to see. Or on Instagram, or on wherever you find her on social media. She reached out and just said, who the heck is this Beto O'Rourke guy? I'm not exactly sure which way I'm going in this election, but I want to make sure that I get some answers. Cynthia tracked down Angie's cell phone number. She was gracious enough, generous enough, kind enough to answer, to listen to me, to ask me questions, to find the common ground. We may not see eye to eye on everything, and I've yet to meet a more independent person than Angie right here. But you know what? I think we may be able to win her vote in this next election. That's what happens when we show up for one another. So Angie is our example, our hero of listening to each other, showing up for one another, meeting each other where we are at, finding the common ground, and bringing us in. That's how we're going to win this election. And I'm pretty confident that with Angie and I and all of us, we are going to be able to do this. And as you said, we're going to win this election and kick some ass. You ready? Let's do this. Thank you all very much, Palestine, for coming out. We are so grateful to you and grateful for you. Thank you.
We're going to stay and take photos if you'd like, but first we're going to go outside because there's about 50 to 25 people that were not able to come in and join us. So we're going to go out there, take pictures with them, and then we will come back.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Sorry, can I slide by real quick? Sorry, I'm gonna slide by real quick.